Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GioMoShow, your home for all Golden Grizzlies basketball. My name is Giovanni Moceri. I am your host, and be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to help support the GioMoShow, especially now that we are officially into the full-time Horizon League season. So rate, review, and subscribe would be your way to not miss one bit of the action as Oakland makes their way towards the Horizon League Championship and therefore March Madness. We're looking to get back here in the Horizon League. Win in the tournament is the only way to make that happen. So your support will be greatly appreciated as we are on this wild ride towards that championship. You can also follow the Instagram at the GioMO Show and the Twitter at GioMoSherry, WXOU, using the hashtag the GioMo Show on all platforms. And in this week, we got a ton of great basketball to cover. Despite a 1-1 record happening for this past week, there's a lot more that meets the eye in terms of that record. With their road game in conference at Northern Kentucky, Oakland winning that one, and a loss at Little Caesars Arena against Michigan State as part of the yearly tradition of our matchup between Tom Izzo and his Spartans. A ton to get through in this one, and I'll help you guys a little bit here. We got a timestamp here for the full version of the show, and you can click the link to find the Michigan State specific episode here, because I'll be going a little bit longer on that one. Not only with the game itself, but also the press conference. And we'll also kind of get into the greater philosophy of college basketball. That's how deep it goes when we play Tom Izzo. So I want to let you guys know that ahead of time here. But without further ado, we'll go full steam ahead, starting with Oakland's win on the road at Northern Kentucky earlier this week. And don't forget, we got a bonus episode of the GioMo Show coming out right after Christmas, Friday morning on December 26th. I had a chance to have a conversation with Bob McDonald, head of the Horizon Roundtable, as a checkpoint. Now that we're facing with the beginning of the full-time Horizon League season, we chatted with him at the preseason, but I wanted to check back with him to see how those thoughts and analysis, predictions of the Horizon League have changed since then. Who is surprised, who is disappointed, and who can we expect to see towards the end of the Horizon League tournament? Who's going to make it back to Indy, although the change of format allows many more teams such opportunity. But we get a chance to talk with Bob about all of that here, so be sure to check that out. Stay subscribed, rated, and reviewed so that you don't miss my conversation with the Horizon Roundtable's Bob McDonald, a checkpoint in the Horizon League season. Now back to the show. So for the game against Northern Kentucky came into this one is tied for the best record in the Horizon League regular season-wise with 9-4, at least as of this recording here. And that puts them, like, even though their Horizon League record is 1-2, they're still, a pretty substantial team in the league. They're winners of 8 of their last 9 coming into it, but the only loss that they had was a really close one against Purdue-Fort Wayne. And remember, Oakland beat Purdue-Fort Wayne 101-92. So just kind of keep that in mind as far as a common opponent. I mentioned that in the preview that I had on the Instagram page here. And this game, typically on the road at Northern Kentucky, is very difficult, and it's one that many teams in the Horizon League don't end up winning, and it's something that if you can get a win in that category, that really sets you apart from the rest of the league. That's exactly what happened in this game, but it did not come easy for Oakland. Early on, it was the big man for NKU, LJ Wells, who really quickly had 8 and 5 and was just dominating things, especially in that first half. He would kind of continue to do that throughout the game, and most likely part of that was really early 2 fouls for Baru that essentially took him out of the first half. He only ended up with 7 minutes in that first half, kind of letting everybody else have to pick up the slack for the preseason Horizon League Player of the Year. And after the first few minutes of that first half, we'll say the first quarter of the game, that's when Oakland was trying to adjust for his absence there, but ended up kind of still keeping it close. It was a close game the entire way, but especially once Michael Hogue and Isaac Garrett started to get really involved in this game, that's what really made the difference. They would end this game, Michael Hogue with 18, Isaac Garrett with 15. We'll get to Brody Robinson a little bit later because he was super crucial down the stretch of the game here. But it was a game that was 18 lead changes. It was 12 times with it tied. Oakland did have the lead for mostly 26 minutes of the game would be their lead. Only 8 minutes of that lead for Northern Kentucky. Everything else was when the game was tied. But it was just a super close game overall, but neither team shooting the three very well. That also kind of contributing to that, where at the end of the game, it was Oakland shooting 33% from deep, 6 of 18, and Northern Kentucky was 6 of 26, which was good for 23%. So it was really going to be one that was dominated kind of inside the arc, in the paint. And as far as that is concerned, Oakland actually outscored in the paint 40-50, but still all of which keeping it close. Brett White making a few threes that are always going to be crucial in games where shooting is hard to come by. Brett White is usually your guy who you can depend on that, even though he was 2 of 8 from deep in this one. But skipping all the way back to the final 90 seconds of the game, where it was close back and forth, one possession. Neither team was really able to put a dent into each other's lead or deficit. Oakland was the one kind of in front most of it, like I was mentioning. But in the final 90 seconds of play, the score was 75-74. Northern Kentucky had the lead, and Oakland was getting the ball out coming out of a timeout. It was a smooth pass from Isaac Garrett to Baru, where honestly, for Isaac Garrett, there's been a few games where he's had one of those behind-the-back passes that would go to nobody, and like they're not ready for it, they're not paying attention, and it ends up looking like a really sloppy play. Now, as the season's starting to go on, those passes are becoming a little bit more anticipated, expected, and a lot more stylish because they're working when Isaac Garrett has the ball. So he was able to find Baru right underneath the basket for him to score and to get Oakland the lead 76-75, and that would really be a lead that would carry them all the way to victory. Oakland then forces a timeout and gets the ball back themselves, and are able to kind of keep control of it. As the clock starts to tick down, Northern Kentucky's still fighting back, but it's getting to a point where they have to force Oakland to foul, and they were great, and they were smart enough to find Brody Robinson with the ball and be the one who was fouled. And kind of out of character for him at some points in this season, he hasn't been shooting the free throws like we would expect an Oakland point guard to do. Was not the case in this game. He was 8 for 8 all game long, and specifically in that 90 seconds, he was a perfect 5 for 5. That maintained Oakland's lead all the way down to 82-77 is your final score. Oakland is now the sole team at the top of the Horizon League, 2-0 in conference play. Despite this 6-6 record, you'll see, at least at the end of this game. We'll get to the Michigan State in a second here, but that puts Oakland in high company with the Horizon League. Those December games that can be so dangerous and so crazy when you're not prepared, you don't have a ton of time to prep, you're not in rhythm of conference play. Getting those early wins is just huge for Oakland. And taking a look at the box score in more detail, Michael Hogue, 18, leads the Golden Grizzlies in points with 8 rebounds, 4 of them on the offensive glass as well. Isaac Garrett had a double-double, 15 and 11, also 4 offensive rebounds. And Brody Robinson, 16 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists. Like I said before, 8 of 8 from the free throw line. And another huge piece in this game, and it was kind of part of the scouting of Northern Kentucky, was that they were either the or top of the country or around there in forcing turnovers. They play a zone as well, but it's a lot more, as I was hearing in the radio broadcast, it's a lot more of an aggressive style of a zone. They're attacking passes and forcing those turnovers very often. They're willing to put the heat on the ball, sacrificing an open man to the other side because they get those turnovers so often. But Oakland was still able to keep control of the ball, only 10 turnovers in a game where that was their strong suit against a team where they specialize in forcing turnovers. Oakland was able to stay about at their average of 10 turnovers in that game. That one was huge. I mean, with how close the game was, you needed to keep control of the ball that way because it was not going to be a game where you can easily swing it right back. You had to scratch and claw for every point that you were getting in this one. So that essentially is the wrap on this game here. It's, as Kampe said in the post-press conference, it's not a hurdle that many teams in the Horizon League are going to clear. Oakland was able to clear this one, 2-0 in Horizon League play, but they got a quick turnaround going back home to Little Caesars Arena to face off once again against Tom Izzo and his Michigan State Spartans in another game that is a little bit more about the result on the court, although what was played on the court was still very entertaining, still very close and encouraging for both teams. So we'll get into that in just a little bit here. We'll pause for a second here, and we'll get into now part 2 of the GioMoShow here, where we'll talk about not only the game on the court at Little Caesars Arena, a little bit about why I wasn't able to attend it this year, and a little bit as to the philosophy and the relationship between those two coaches and how it applies to all of college basketball. We'll get deep into it here. Coming up next on the break, after the break here on the GioMoShow. And now the big ticket item of this episode, that is the Oakland and Michigan State matchup at Little Caesars Arena once again. A game that goes beyond the record, but is still important as far as the season is concerned, about what each team learns about each other. And it also extends to the relationship between Greg Kampe and Tom Izzo, the legacy they have not only on the entirety of the NCAA, but specifically in Michigan, specifically to the city of Detroit with this event. This is a huge event, and it just stinks that I wasn't able to be there. My quick explanation for that and my begging for forgiveness was that it was the only date, that December 20th, that I was able to host or put together and organize an alumni swim meet between the current Dakota High School swim team and the alumni of the Dakota High School swim team. Okay, so that little camp right there, it means a lot to me, and it was important enough to me to be there instead of downtown Detroit. Because the Pistons were playing that night, the game had to be moved to 12 o'clock, which sucks, because if it wasn't, I would have been able to do both. But either way, I wasn't there in person, and I'm recording this on Sunday. I was able to watch it back on TV. And yes, I did watch the game for those before I hear any of that. I did watch the game. I know it is important for me to cover this stuff and watch the game. Not everybody watches the games that they cover, sometimes because they can't, sometimes because there's too much, sometimes because they're lazy. I am not lazy. I will watch the games that I cover, and I will let you know if I don't. We got a deal? All right. So to get that out of the way, I really wish I could have been there, because it was just such an exciting game in and of itself, and then also the atmosphere as I've laid out before. So I want to get into the game itself before we get into the greater implications of it and yada yada soapbox type of stuff. So in this game, it was I guess the biggest headline for it is that it was the closest halftime score between Oakland and Michigan State in 2016. Almost 10 years, 9 years specifically, where it was a close 39-36, a 3-point deficit for Oakland as they go into halftime. It was almost that close. It was almost even closer last year. I remember there was a point where Oakland was leading 31-30 in that game, but some scoring at the very end of the first half would allow Michigan State to have a little bit of a bigger lead, and it didn't count for the record, et cetera, et cetera. But last year, Oakland even played them super, super close in the first half without Baru, because Baru tweaked his back right before that game. That was not the case in this one. Baru had a fantastic game in this one, but it was a game where in that first, and I'm going to focus a lot on the first half, because that is where it's a little bit more of a level playing field. Izzo does take the opportunity to get a lot of his bench players some minutes into this game, and if you look at the stat sheet, you have about 10 players, I think all 11 players had time in this game. And so he rotates them in and out. It's not an entire bench lineup, but he'll filter them in, give them some opportunity. And that's where I find it better to analyze, because that is still against higher competition. It's still, I think the bench of the Big Ten should still be better than the starting five of the Horizon League, just in the terms of the tiering of college basketball. But Oakland played extremely well in that first half to keep it that close. 8 ties and I believe 5 lead changes. Or 8 lead changes and 5 ties in that game. There would be another couple of ties in the second half as well, but that was where most of that kind of action went. Oakland did lead for 9.5 minutes in this game, and they would even get up to a 7-point lead at the 13:33 mark, where they led by 7. Michigan State, their biggest lead was 12 at the 15-minute mark of the second half, kind of coming right out of the gate of halftime, but still Oakland was able to keep it within single digits against the top Big Ten team of this year, or at least, well, I'll put it this way: they were the champions of the Big Ten regular season last year, and things have changed a little bit, but Michigan State's still retaining much of that roster and still atop of the Big Ten, all things considered. Yes, Michigan is fantastic, but Michigan State is as well. And while we're on that subject, I'll come back to the game in a second. What a time for Michigan basketball. Michigan as a state. not only do you have two of the best teams in the country in U of M and Michigan State, you also have Oakland in their own right doing pretty well. Detroit Mercy is not complete dog water this year. They've actually improved greatly, which makes me very excited for those coming matchups between our squad and Mark Montgomery of Detroit Mercy. I'm excited for those. Then you also have the Pistons, the professional team that is doing super, super well this season to top the Eastern Conference. This has just been a fantastic time for basketball fans in the state of Michigan, and I want to pause for a second to let you guys appreciate that. It ain't that often that a lot of the basketball stars align to create an atmosphere like this in Michigan, specifically in southeastern Michigan, Detroit. Like it is sweetness right now. So I wanted to pause and get to that. But either way, Michigan State, their bench should still be better than our starting five, but still we were able to play really well in this one, keep it really close. Now, what did kind of make a big difference was obviously the size and rebounding. Those teams are rebounding teams. That was the case in this one. 42-26, Michigan State advantage in the rebounding side of things. But where Oakland did have the advantage was in the three-point shooting and free throw shooting as well. Now, Michigan State got a lot more trips to the free throw line with 23, but only made 17 of them. Yes, it's still more than what Oakland had, but Oakland was 12 of 13 from the free throw line on a professional court against a Big Ten team, which is basically a road game for Oakland, just given the proportion of Michigan State fans there. Still a ton of Oakland fans from what I hear, but either way, to go 12 of 13 from the line in that kind of environment is nuts. And ironically, it was Brody Robinson was the only one who had a miss from the line in this game, but he was still 2 of 3 in that one. And also, the three-point shooting came back. We didn't have it against Northern Kentucky, but we had it against Michigan State, where not only was it Brody Robinson, who was 3 of 6 from deep in that game, Zahir Wells was a perfect 3 of 3 from deep in that game. His buckets were huge in this one. Baru was also perfect. 2 of 2 from deep. One of them just had all the time in the world, stepped into it, thought about it, breathed, dribbled, shot it, nothing but net. Baru was able to get involved in it as well. Hogue had a three-pointer, too, the Detroit native, making some noise in this game. And he had a great game overall in his own right. But overall, Oakland was 45% from the three-point line, 10 of 22 against the Spartans. That is some good stuff right there. And in addition to that, only 12 turnovers, which, yes, is a little bit more than we would like. But again, the competition we're playing against, the environment that we're in, only 12 turnovers against that kind of a team. Izzo's team had 11 as well. So that was pretty even in of itself. Oakland with 8 steals as well. I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, but I want you guys to understand that this game was close. It was competitive. You kind of knew that if Michigan State really wanted to, they could have put their foot on the throats right away by playing up their starting 5 and their normal kind of Big Ten lineup, but that's not the case. That's not what this game is about. It's not what it's for, and it's not how it's played. Both coaches understand that, and their relationship is such that they want to kind of keep it that way. And now is the time where we kind of open up the umbrella a little bit and get deeper into this game, kind of outside the court. The sweaters. That's pretty much I said the biggest headline was that we had the closest first half since 2016. But the actual biggest headline from whenever you read articles on this game was the sweaters. And the sweaters were absolutely fantastic this year. This time going a custom route. Last year, Kampe had the nice big Grinch smiling green sweaters that he picked out. This year was a custom design from Izzo's beach house neighbor, who has a company that creates sweaters like this, or at least is able to. And they had the naughty and nice list for both the coaches with custom designs on the front where Izzo deemed himself as on the naughty list. They sewn on a picture of him yelling at a referee. And Kampe's being on the nice list where he was fist bumping the referee next to him. Although the way it turned out in the game, the roles were kind of reversed. Kampe was the one who had a lot more problems with the officials in this game. Izzo felt in that press conference to point it out immediately. He was joking, saying that you were, I put you on the sweater to be nice, but you were more like an ass today. We'll have some of the clips from the press conference in just a short moment here, but the sweaters are just amazing, and that opens our umbrella even further as to the relationship that these two coaches have and how incredibly special it is, how heartwarming it is for a lot of us who, in covering college athletics, are a little bit negative, a little more world is ending, the sport is ruined, don't talk to me about it anymore kind of feeling to it. But it is just such a special relationship. A lot of us in college basketball don't have the positive outlook that they used to. But if you just look at that game at LCA, you'll see two coaches that kind of keep that pureness of college basketball alive, their relationship going. Both the coaches have been with their respective schools for 40 plus years. Just Izzo with 31 years at the head coaching helm specifically, that putting them both as the top tenured coaches in Division One. It's just so special. This is very rare in college athletics nowadays, especially with the turnover of not only players, but coaches as well. And that kind of turnover of coaches is what somewhat led to the turnover of players too. With that common argument being, if coaches can move, why can't players? But that's not the case that we have here in Michigan. And it's special, it is rare, and it's something that I hope that you fans are able to appreciate in this one. And it kind of gives both of them, like, not only is there like a wisdom that comes with covering, or that comes with being in the same spot for so long, but there was also a freedom and a trust that the university has in that coach to maybe say certain things. Like if you're Kampe, the student section comments probably would have got a new coach in very hot water, but he has the cachet, he has the time, he has the self-acknowledged kind of authority or right to say things like that. Izzo the same way. And very often people look to Tom Izzo and as well to Greg Kampe as the philosophers and historians and kind of the keepers of college basketball pureness. And a little bit of that was had in the press conference today where, both the coaches, they shared the press conference afterwards. It happened last year, and I'm not sure about the years before, but at least when I was there last year at LCA, Kampe did kind of crash the press conference that Izzo had, and it ended up just being kind of a press conference for the both of them. And I did see one article that described that press conference as podcast-like, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. That is a great way to describe it because they're such good friends, and they talk to each other, they jib-jab back and forth. They're very like-minded people, and it is very conversational. I would love to listen to the two of them interview each other, or if there's a mediator between the two of them, and to just have that kind of, like extended hour-long discussion covering whatever they want to cover. Even if it's not basketball, I want to hear that. I want that. That would be fantastic to listen to. But in that press conference, they covered a ton of things. And I'll kind of go over some of the highlights here, and I'll show you, and I'll play some audio from the press conference via WILX News 10 in Lansing, Mid-Michigan. They had the video of the full press conference that I'll be sharing with some of you guys here. But one of the bigger points was that how important this game is for the city of Detroit, and how it's hosted by 313 Presents. It's a big thing. They fill the place up. There's a ton of fans there, and it's something that both of them are just nothing but thankful to the crowd, both on Oakland and Michigan State side. In both the coaches acknowledging each other's fan bases as well. How important that game is for each of the schools, but specifically for Kampe, not only is it for the city, but he also mentions that without this relationship that he has with Tom Izzo, he might not still be at Oakland. So with that, I'll let you guys listen to the audio of that.
I would not be here today still if it wasn't for him. I mean, what he's done for me and our program, I'm getting choked up because it's true. He's helped me raise. I got really good players because I was able to pace them, and he's the one who helped me do that. He on his own came down and did an event twice now for me that I've raised close to $500,000. And having someone who I respect, you've heard me say often, he's the best coach in the game, and I say that, and I mean it. But having someone, we've come the same path, we believe in the same things, and to be able to talk to, what you guys don't know is about 5 hours from now he's going to call me and he's going to tell me what we have to do to win. And I can't wait for that call because I want to know what he thinks. But that's When you have that in this day and age, and you both believe in a state, and you both believe in your school, and we're kind of the spokesmen for our school. I mean, after 40, and I mean, everybody says, well, you got him by 10 years. I don't have him by 10 years. He was at state as long as I've been at Oakland. Judd just wouldn't go away for a while, right? But to have that is, this relationship for me is the single most important relationship I've had in my professional career. And I'm lucky.
And you don't see that very often. Again, I'm going to keep reiterating it. This right here is special, and especially as these guys are so deep into their careers, you know, they're kind of closer to the end of it than they are at the beginning. It's times like this that we have to cherish and appreciate what these two have. But not only that, but obviously they also get into the philosophy and the kind of state of college athletics in this, you know, in this day and age. I feel like every press conference that comes across my feed of Tom Izzo is kind of regarding that. And it's, you know, there is almost nobody that has as much authority to speak on that than these two coaches here. But one thing that was interesting is that, you know, it's always about kind of the players being able to transfer and should they stay with the program. And that was obviously covered in terms of Carson Cooper, Jackson Kohler, Cohen Carr, Jeremy Fears, a lot of the returning players for Michigan State. But it was also between the kind of interaction and relationships built between coaches. And I'll let Izzo elaborate on that in terms of the state of college basketball.
Him and I will talk about it, and we'll pick our players apart, and eventually we'll gain. You know, that's the way it used to be. You know, I told Bruce Weber, he was at your practice, he was at my practice, both of our good friends, and coaches used to help coaches. Now you don't want coaches around because they're stealing your players. That's sad. It's really sad. And so the few that I have are going to remain that way for me.
You know, that's something you don't really think about, or something I haven't really thought about, is that when, you know, a relationship like these two have is rare, not only because of the length they've been with each other, but because nowadays it's almost disadvantageous for you to be and interact with and, you know, host other coaches for feedback and for, you know, kind of speaking to your team, just kind of giving them another voice to listen to and to learn from. But that's almost disadvantageous because every time a player is contacted, is spoken to, is seen, it is almost always in an effort to poach that player, to pick them off that roster. So it kind of pits coaches between themselves in terms of their competitiveness and wanting to win and using the rules to their advantage, whether there's like a morality to it or not. You want to poach the best players that you can because that's what you're allowed to do, and that's what's going to make you win. But that contrasts the relationship and kind of building with other coaches, building relationships with them, feedback from each other, learning from each other. They kind of fight against each other. And nowadays, a lot of coaches are kind of forced into the poaching realm of things because they do not have as long of a leash as these coaches have. So therefore, they got to get results quick. They got to get players quick, and they're going to pluck them off your roster when they get the chance to. So that kind of prevents coaches from kind of collaborating with each other, except for these guys. And especially what was interesting to me, and this one was news, but Izzo was referring to Trey Townsend when he was talking about the player that he referred to as the player that went to Arizona. He spoke to him and said this. We'll listen to the press conference.
Remember a couple of years ago when you had the kid that ended up at Arizona, I called you about him, and you said, I said, what do you think? He says, well, you should go after him, but I'm trying to keep him. And I says, well, I'll call him and try to get him to stay. And that's what's missing in our profession right now, you know. We are absolutely poaching our own players.
You see what I'm getting at here? This is so unique in college ball. Can you tell me another coach who talks to another team's player and encourages him to stay? When does that ever happen? That's nuts. But Izzo does that. Izzo and Kampe do that. And they want to encourage players to stay with the university that they're at. Because especially in terms with Izzo, a lot of his team are that kind of brought up the old school way and are now into their much improved senior years because they've stuck with it, because they grew and understood that they're not going to be playing much right away, but they will if they improve and train and learn and stay. Oakland's 2024 team, the one that beat Kentucky, the one that I got newspaper clippings up in my room now for it, that was full of guys like that. Blake Lampman, Trey Townsend, Chris Conway, a ton of guys stuck with the program and, improved, got their starting minutes, earned it. And that, along with great other additions, obviously, to the roster, that experience, connectivity, understanding of the zone just in and of itself led them to defeating a much more inexperienced team despite their talent in Kentucky. That was huge in that game. Izzo and Kampe are examples of that kind of old school way. I can't get enough of it. Can you guys tell I can't get enough of it? I love these guys. I love what they represent for college athletics, and I hope that they can hold on to their role long enough to bear the storm of this crazy kind of college transfer portal era of college athletics, to help stabilize it and return it to a little bit more of a familiar yet player-friendly way of doing things. There's a lot to cover in this one. This is just one basketball game, right? It's just, I love these guys so much. I can watch these press conferences all day. They're the friendliest guys, at least for Kampe. I haven't met Izzo personally, but I got to imagine that since those guys are so similar, they're cut from the same cloth, that he would be just as welcoming to, especially young media, like Kampe is. And I've seen many examples of it outside of myself as well. So it's just, I can't get enough of this game. I hope this matchup never ends. But there may be outside factors that could affect that, but it looks like they're going to do everything they can to keep this matchup going. And I'll even throw in another piece of audio or Izzo was talking about, as long as he's still there.
I'll straighten that out right now. As long as I'm here, we won't play you. So you don't have to worry about that, even though I think I'm the one insane because it's going to happen. But I had a lot of respect for you, your program, and the people down here. And
God, I love these guys. All right, so we'll put a bow on the Oakland and Michigan State side of things here. We'll look forward now. We got one more game before the new year. Oakland will be on the road as part of their full-time Horizon League schedule now to face the Wright State Raiders on December 28th. And for those on YouTube, I'm looking at a calendar. December 28th, they will be playing Wright State University against the Raiders, and we'll be covering that here on the GioMoShow. It might get a little bit light. Hopefully, my talk with Bob McDonald will help fend you guys off a little bit. Not fend you guys off, of course, but kind of hold you guys over until we get a little bit more matchups. We get that kind of two game a week conference schedule going. But it's going to be really exciting. I can't wait to see how Oakland, now playing 4 top 10 opponents, are able to use that experience to go forward. And will those lessons appear in the late stages of the regular season, in the tournament, and if they, by golly, win the Horizon League again, when they face another huge big-time opponent, will those lessons of playing those teams earlier in the season bear fruit? I can't wait to see it. It's going to be so awesome. And I hope you guys are along for the ride as well. I hope you guys are rating, reviewing, subscribing, and liking, interacting with, following, everything you can within your power. Remember, it's all free. The button you press to support the show is free. It won't cost you nothing, but I'll thank you for it anyway. So be sure to do all that. Follow the show. We got a ton coming up, and I can't wait to get all to it. So, to wrap things up here, my name is Giovanni Moceri, here for the GioMoShow, your home for more Golden Grizzlies basketball, and we'll see you next time with more Golden Grizzlies basketball.